we're not helping people, we're not growing.
Right.
And so in order for us to help people in their personal lives and in business, we have to have a desire to do that. And one of the biggest things that I've learned in the last year by surrounding myself with other people who are doing huge things is flexing my giving muscle. And so January 4th of this year, I set out with a goal to give 100 times more than I did last year. Welcome to the Mind Your Own Business podcast. I'm your host, Steven Sterrick. This show is where we talk about all kinds of different stuff in business, but mainly we talk about how to mind your own business and stay in your own lane, and we interview only distinguished guests in order to find out their secrets. Hey guys, just wanted to take a second here and thank you for listening to the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. It means the world to me. It means so much to me that you guys are listening. I don't make any money off of this stuff. I do it for free. I do it out of the goodness of my heart. I want to help people, and I want to share all this cool information with you guys and everybody else in the world. So if you could think of somebody that you would share this to, so if they got some value out of it, I would really appreciate it. Share it on your socials. Click that little button for sharing and share it to your story. Thanks a lot.
It's a beautiful Wednesday here in Ventura, California. We're sitting at the Pacific View Mall. My buddy, he was so kind to come over here and visit me at the Pacific View Mall. Steven Sterrick, thank you for coming down and sit and talk to me, man.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. I really appreciate it, man. Happy to be here. It's definitely a strange setting, just sitting at a table in the middle of a mall, but I think it's really rad because it's very organic and it's not something like sitting in a studio being boxed in by four walls.
This is a big part of my whole radio story. Was I first started doing the AM radio the very first time. It was one of these remotes. It was like at some quick stop in the middle of Selmas, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning. It was freezing, and this place had amazing burritos. But we sat there, and we had people that would just stand at the end of the table and just stare at us. And I was like looking at them, I was like, is this really what radio is, dude? But I'm excited to have you on because you have a podcast that recently came out. You're a few episodes in, and I've listened to them, and I really like the way that you view not just business, but partnerships and just community. That shines through it in the things that you talk about. Clearly, you're talking about strategies to win.
Yeah.
But I feel like you're also trying to set other people up to win as well.
Of course, man. Well, I mean, like at the beginning, middle, and end of the day, it's all about helping people. And if we don't help people, then what the hell are we doing here?
Right.
And so this table that we're sitting at is a nonprofit organization about helping homeless and other communities that are like behavioral health, mental health. And really that's what it's all about because And so my mentor, he was like, you got to keep track of it, right? Because how are you going to measure it if you don't keep track of it? So I got a spreadsheet, right? I got an Excel spreadsheet, and I literally keep track of every single time I donate or give to some different organization. Now, whether that's giving money or time or knowledge or contacts, anything that I can possibly do to help, I keep track of it so that way at the end of the year, I can really see what I've done and what I haven't done. And then like mid-year, I have my own check-in. I'm like, hey, how much did I do in the first 6 months? And then right now we're coming up on the end of the third quarter of the year. So I'm checking to make sure that like I'm going to be hitting my target towards the end of the year.
That's so great because I see you as actively looking for ways to give back. So you just assume you're going to hit that mark. But if you're not paying attention to the numbers, then how do you really know, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's with anything in life that if you want to control it, you have to be able to measure it. Mm-hmm. And so whether that's giving your time or money, or whether that's running your own business, or helping out a church if you like to go to church, or spending time with your family. You know, how much time do you spend with your family? Well, I can say I spend, a certain amount of days per week with my family, or like on the weekends, I like to take my kids out to do stuff in park or the beach or whatever. But like, unless I'm actually keeping track of that stuff, how do I really know? Like I can go back in my memory and be like, oh yeah, I spent, 2 days with my kids last weekend and we did this, this, and this. Mm-hmm. But if I don't write it down, like, the calendar for me, like my phone calendar is actually like a really good way for me to measure this type of stuff, because I can look back and say, yes, I did those things, because I never delete anything out of my calendar. I always leave it in there, and I have it set so like it doesn't expire and auto delete. So I can always look back and see, and like at the end of the month, I'll go back and I'll look at like what I did, what I wanted to do, what I did, what I actually accomplished, and where I failed.
Oh, that's great. So you're keeping yourself accountable.
Yeah, in a weird way.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the family thing, because it used to be in the old days that if you wanted to be a successful businessman, then that meant you probably weren't going to be much of a family man.
Yeah.
Like, how many times did we hear the story?
Yeah.
Dad was okay, I guess. He was always at work, or he was always on business trips and always. But you're putting the family first, business around the family. Is that a product of the time we live in, or is that just a different mindset of, I'm going to go out and this is just as important to me as this is, so this is where I'm putting my efforts and this is where I'm going to schedule my time at?
Yeah, I think that it's important to design your life the way you want to see it. So for me, I've had multiple businesses over the years that have taken me away from my family. We had a trucking company here in Ventura that I got rid of at the end of last year for numerous reasons, but one of the reasons on my pros and cons list that I was drawing up before I was going to exit the trucking company, one of the reasons was, do I really want to jump in the truck at 4 o'clock in the morning and leave my family to go to Bakersfield and make a delivery and then go to 4 other cities that day and have a 14-hour day? But I missed my kids' open house at school.
Yeah.
I missed my daughter just started going to dance class yesterday. So
nice.
Other things that I was missing as a product of the choices I made. I made a choice to start that trucking company. When I started it, I didn't think about how it was going to affect my family enough. I didn't think enough about how it was going to affect my family. And it greatly affected my family to the point where, I was gone a lot. It was a burden on my wife. It was a burden on our in-laws who do a lot of childcare for us. And so I think that designing your life the way that you want to live it, the way that you prioritize things like your family, are very important. So now, every time I'm thinking about a new business decision, or anything really, it doesn't have to be in business, but like anything I want to do in my life, I think about, how is this going to affect my family? How much time am I going to have to commit to this new idea or this new project or venture or whatever the hell it is? And does it fit within the life that I want to design for myself? So as far as family is concerned, like, family is first, for sure. It has to be first, because if it's not first, again, like with giving and helping people, what the hell are we doing here if our family is not our priority?
Yeah, exactly. What am I going to do? Just buy stuff until I'm dead? Like, leave no legacy other than, I sold some stuff and bought some stuff and died. That was my life.
That was it.
Kids barely know me.
Right.
No memories.
Yeah, that's what's going to be on your tombstone. Buyer and seller of shit.
Right.
And like, nobody wants to be known as that type of person.
It's funny you mentioned that, having to look at, when you're starting a business, how that's going to affect your family. I was doing comedy before I had kids, and then as the kids came in, it really complicated my comedy life. In fact, I look back to one specific night when I was in Laughlin trying to watch a football game on a really crappy TV that my hotel room had. It was a Sunday, and I wasn't even at the end of my run. I still had to drive to way out in the middle of Arizona the next day. And I was on the phone with, she was my wife at the time, and her and the kids are watching the game. And I told her, I don't think I could do this anymore. Like, I'm all the way out here. I'm in Laughlin at this stinky casino.
Yeah.
And my heart's back there with you guys watching the 49ers probably lose to the Saints or whatever, and I remember that moment. I remember thinking, if I would have known, I definitely wouldn't have stacked my life this way.
Yeah.
But I came off of the road, and it was funny because she goes, well, you should just start doing radio. And I'm like, yeah, you just start doing radio.
Yeah.
And then, oddly enough, an opportunity opened up, and that's what I ended up doing. But kind of wish I would have been able to figure out how to make the comedy work with the kids and everything at the same time, because that was just a difficult thing, because it seems like all the best gigs would come, and it would be a birthday, or it would be an anniversary or a holiday, and you're like, oh, I have to choose every single time. It's a choice. The best paying gig I'm going to get in 2022, or do I, go to my kids' last hockey game or whatever, and it's just
So would you say that moment in that hotel room in Laughlin was a pivotal shift for the future and how you wanted to live your life?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And what decisions did you start making, or what choices did you start making after that stinky Laughlin casino?
Well, the decisions I made was to stop calling people and begging for work that I didn't really want to begin with. You get stuck into this place where you're so happy to be working and you do it, that you take these gigs. And that Laughlin gig, I'll be honest, because I'm not going to do it again, so I don't care. I'm not going to hurry. Like, I believe I was making like $150 a day on that.
Wow.
And you're not getting travel money. They take care of your hotel and they feed you. But I think I was getting like maybe $150, $200 a day.
That's awful.
And it was, and there was like long drives in between. Like Laughlin, I was there for 2 nights or 3 nights, but there was long drives on each side of it.
Right, and they're not paying for your fuel there and
No.
back. They're not paying for any of that stuff.
Not paying for your fuel. If something happens to you, they're not responsible whatsoever.
Man.
Out on the road.
I'd run away from that business faster than I was on fire.
It's funny you say that because it took me a long time to actually run away from the business. I finally walked away from the comedy aspect of Giggles, at least, trying to produce shows and all. Just really like in the last month where I was like, this isn't feeding anything for me anymore.
Like literally in this last month.
Yeah, in the last month. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm in a place where I have a lot of things that are better because I'm going, okay, this is a branch that I can't nourish anymore. Like I've given 8 years, and a lot of it honestly was about community. I would do these shows in Santa Paula, and then I would start getting burned out, and somebody'd see it, and they would go, I'll help you do this. And then it would be just until I started to get burned out again. And I appreciate those people because what we had was special for a really long time, but you kind of get to a point where you go, I've lived so much of my life trying to create opportunities for other people and none for myself.
Wow.
And you've picked up on the way I am business-wise. I don't like talking money. I don't like talking about I don't view myself as having any particular talent or anything like that.
Wow.
It's kind of a bizarre place to be, but
yeah.
I am confident in the direction things are going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Well, and I think that you have to give yourself more credit too. I think that you have to, I think people in general need to not discount their abilities. Because this is like the self-deprecating dialogue, the internal dialogue becomes self-deprecating to the point where you start believing your own bullshit. You're like, oh, I'm not good at that. Oh, I'm never going to amount to whatever, right? Insert X goal. I'm never going to do that. Well, if you keep talking to yourself that way, and I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to like people in general.
But you are talking to me, but believe it or not, but I'm listening.
Okay. And if people continue talking to themselves that way, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It will become that.
Right.
If we put other things out into the universe, I'm a big believer in like the universe is way more connected than we think it is, right? So same reason why like, hey, I was just thinking about you, friend, whoever's going to call you, whatever. Yeah, that's the universe saying like, hey, this is supposed to be. This is supposed to happen. This connection is supposed to be made.
Right.
Right? Like you and I met at a friend of ours, his office, Jim, he's an insurance dude.
Yeah.
And he brought us both in so we could connect. And he didn't know what that relationship was going to build. Originally, it was just like, hey, we could be a referral source for each other.
Right, right.
Now here we are doing a podcast together and working together and launching basically a whole nother business together, whether we know it or not.
Yeah.
Right? Our trajectories are both changed forever because of the choices we've made. Going back to that, you made a choice to not do comedy anymore because you're making $150 a day if you're lucky, and you're away from your family and you have fuel costs that are involved that they're not covering. So really you're probably making $70 to $80 a day.
Oh yeah, if you're lucky.
Which is like, just don't do that ever again.
Right. Yeah.
But what you're doing now I think is amazing because you're going to help a lot more people, right? Because this podcast goes out to thousands, 10,000s of people are going to listen to this, right? And this is that one-to-many concept that we talk so much about, where you can have one-on-one conversations with people as much as you'd like, but you only have a certain amount of hours in the day to have those conversations.
Right.
So recording something like this, getting the message out there, and then having many, many people listen to this kind of stuff is way more impactful than working on that one-to-one basis. Or, for example, like your comedy in a small social club with an audience of 50 people.
Who are all drunk.
And they don't give a shit what you're saying.
Yeah.
Anyway. They're just like, make me laugh, guy.
Yeah.
That doesn't really matter, right? That's not going to change people's lives other than maybe a little bit of comedic respite. But what's really going to change people's lives is having conversations like this.
Yeah.
And sharing what we know, what we've learned. And hopefully if one person has picked up on anything that we've talked about today and it helps them change their life in one simple way, who knows what that is? Like, I don't know what it's going to be for them, but if it changes their life for the good in one way, then we've done our job.
That's true.
We've absolutely done our job.
That is, because that's what you really want. You want to create that positive impact, and that's why it's important for me to tell you that I was kind of like putting stuff together on your podcast. I'm like listening to it, and I'm going, this is so good. Like, it's, the universe connected. You're coming along at a time where I need to hear grown-ups talk about grown-up stuff, and the way that you need to look at your business and the way you deal with things. I've always kind of went out and just did whatever felt like it would be fun, and then let the wife deal with, yeah. You only came home with $80 from New York, and I know.
Yeah.
But like, I have to look at things more. I went through a healing process. The divorce was really hard for me because I didn't see it coming. Oh. And it was like, and I'm a dad. Like, I went to my daughter's bed, took her from her bed every morning and brought her out to have breakfast, and I would carry her back to her room, even, at the age of whatever it was, she was 9, I think, when I moved out of the house. Oh. To me, I loved and lived for those moments of, being there. So it was really hard, and it's still hard. It's not always, I'm not laying around in a ball crying for myself, but it still is tough, and I have to be honest about that in order to, like, actually have relationships with people, because there's times where I'm like, hey, I might shut down sometimes and it might not make sense, but maybe Paw Patrol was on a TV across the hall and I just happened to notice it, and so I'll go back to some moment in time,
that elicits a trauma response, right? And so a lot of things that I've learned from my wife, but my wife being a really good therapist, she talks to me a lot about these new trainings and things like that she's learning about. And one of the things we've really talked a lot about is trauma. And you going through a divorce is an extremely traumatic experience. And there's like this, I don't know what the word is, but it's like buried deep into your brain, right? Somatic? Maybe it's somatic? I don't know if that's the right word or not. I'm not great with words. But a situation like that where, yes, you saw a Paw Patrol episode and it took you back to this moment, with your kid, that right there elicited that same exact feeling that you were having maybe during the divorce that you were going through.
Oh yeah.
And that can be detrimental if it's not talked about, if it's not taken care of, healed, like you said, or like treated, if you will, right?
Right.
This is my wife coming out. We need to go through the treatment process, No, but I think it's extremely important that what you've done and like recognized these issues that you've had and then worked to heal them.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's been my priority. Like, I've had, even my kids are like, Dad, why don't you, my son's like, Dad, you should get a girlfriend. I think it'd be okay. And I'm like, I said, well, right now I've kind of got to be able to deal with my own stuff before trying to hand my stuff over to somebody else and be like, hey, why don't you help me deal with this baggage right now? I'm like, and I explained to him that I actually decided when this happened, I go, okay, the first thing I did was I went back into my son's room because I was cleaning it, and I went and just kind of finished cleaning it, and I'm like going, okay, what am I going to do? And that was the time when I decided, all right, I'm just going to go along with what she says, as long as it's not absolutely, mind-bending crazy. I'm just going to, when she's the one that decided who got what, all that stuff. I didn't fight any of that. And I'm going to do everything I can not to create more problems, because my goal at the end of the day is to make sure that I have as much access to my children as I possibly can, that my children know that they're my priority. I'm not willing to put my relationship with my kids at risk over who gets the treadmill. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like, right? Yeah. And so I decided that really early on, and then I've kind of tried to live that, and the healing it's kind of slow, because especially when something happens that you're totally not expecting. You're like, okay, well, but they appreciate it, and I talk to my kids. I just had a long conversation with my son about it last night, about the healing and how important it is to make sure that you let those things come out and not just bury them in, because they're not going to just stay there. They're gonna resurface. But I do feel like I'm at a place now where I can start making productive decisions and start actually taking on responsibilities without worrying about falling apart because I see Paw Patrol in the background or something like that. Because for a long time I'd go to the house to drop the kids off, and I couldn't do anything but go home and lay down afterwards, because it was just I can't imagine. Yeah. And I really can't imagine. Yeah. My daughters are almost 3 and almost 6. I feel like I'm just now, like with my 6-year-old, like
she just started kindergarten. And so there have been a lot of changes, right? And her brain is growing like crazy. Same thing with the toddler, right? The 3-year-old, her brain is growing like crazy. And I'm learning so much about them every single day. And I'm appreciating them and loving them so much more every single day. And for some reason, in the last like month, it just feels like the growth has been exponential, and that I've really been able to connect with both of them. And I don't know, maybe that's some internal personal changes and stuff that I've been making within myself. Or maybe it's just that they're growing so rapidly that I'm like grabbing on to every single thing I possibly can. And I cannot imagine not waking up in the same house as them.
Yeah.
I can't imagine going to bed without them. So you guys split custody? Is that how you do it, or what do you guys do?
Yeah, I have them because I'm in a small apartment, so I have them just the one night a week, and they share my bedroom with me, and and we have fun when we're together. So basically, we have split custody, but they spend the night at my house just once night a week. So I have them almost every day of the week at some point.
Okay.
She's kind of weird with the way she split custody. It's like, I'll have them 12 hours, then you have them 12 hours. Okay. I'm exaggerating, but it feels like that a little bit. Because so Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll get them from school, and then I have them till the late evening, and then she comes and picks them up from my place. I have them every other Friday, and then I have them on Saturdays. The custody thing's actually been really fair, considering that it has to be split.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to have limited access to my kids, I can't complain. And she really is. As much as I give her a hard time about being really strict with like times and stuff like that, if I talk to her and go, hey, I really could use the extra time, she's very accommodating. So it's not like she's, back here. But it drives her crazy. If I say I'm going to be there at 3 and I get there at 3:15, it drives her crazy because that's the way her brain is.
Sure.
It's not because she's a terrible human being. It's just how her brain works.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely get that. Like, being punctual is something that some people do well and some people don't do well. And the people who do it well, they get bothered when other people don't think the same way.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just how that is. But as far as the kids are concerned, man, I'm really, I'm sorry that you went through that and currently going through that. I can't imagine it, but unfortunately it's more normal in our society than it ever was.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that the people who stay together just for the kids make it worse for the kids.
Yeah.
So I commend you guys for, well, I mean, you said you got blindsided by it or whatever it was. Maybe not blindsided. Maybe that's not the right word, but you were surprised.
But I think you get it, though, because my mindset there was kind of a degree of we were staying together for the kids. We weren't it's not like we hated each other, didn't get along. We operated well as a family, but weren't particularly close as far, Yeah, you know how relationships are supposed to be. And there were just little differences of opinion on how things should work or how things should be prioritized, I guess. But other than that, there wasn't a lot of markers of, oh man, this is pending doom. But you are right, though. I think it is better for the kids that we are separate, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's healthier for them.
Yeah.
Because they can see two healthy adults parenting together but separately, rather than two unhealthy adults living together and then having that stress and the weight of the negative relationship then seeping into the way you raise your kids.
Right.
Because if you raise your kids with that kind of mindset rather than, hey, we're happy separately, if you raise them with, we're unhappy together and we're going to raise you this way, you're going to create kids that have grown up that way.
Right.
And they're going to turn into little shitheads, frankly.
Yeah. And this is what's going to be normal for me when I grow up. That's what I always think with my daughter. I'm like, I want her to expect people to be kind to her and people to open doors. I want her to expect that to be normal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the girl dad thing. Yeah.
So I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that I remembered from a long time ago, and I don't even know where I heard it, but you are your daughter's first love, right? You are the first love of her life, and every love thereafter, she's going to be looking for that same love, the example of love that you gave her. So the best thing that I can possibly do for my daughters is give them the best experience of love that they could possibly have. So that way, when they go out into the world and they look for a partner when they're older, they look for a healthy relationship in love rather than not another healthy relationship. And I always try and keep that in the back of my mind. And listen, like, there is no perfect parent. Right. There is no perfect child. And even though we strive to do all that stuff, like, we still have bad moments in parenting. We
Yeah.
still have times where we get overheated and we're just like, oh, no, don't do that. No, you're not supposed to do it this way, or whatever you're going to, however we react to our kids sometimes. But I think it's always important to follow up those moments with a lot of love and reassurance that just because something went sideways doesn't mean we don't love you.
Right.
I think it's extremely important to and I almost drill that into our kids' heads. Yes, aside from what you just did, that was not right. We were not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to, I don't know, put toilet paper up your sister's nose until it comes out her ears, but I still love you.
I'm glad you say that too, because it's so, you think that it's just common knowledge. You think a kid should just know that.
Yeah.
But my daughters literally asked me, "Do you even still love me?" When we're not seeing eye to eye.
Oh,
Granted, she's a little dramatic.
Okay.
But it's in her head.
Yeah.
At least enough to say it, even if it's to torment her dad or to manipulate me a little bit. She does say it. So, but that means she needs to hear it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If she's asking, she needs to hear it.
How old is she now?
She's 11 now.
She's 11 now.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's 11. She's got a couple of issues, and I can talk about it because I talk about it in my stand-up, and she knows, and she has no problem with it. She was at a really early age diagnosed with something called ODD. It's oppositional defiant disorder, which means that her natural self is to push back.
Yeah.
Whether it's a parent, whether it's a teacher or whatever. And it's a really challenging thing for her.
Yeah.
And people just think, oh, it's a bad kid, but she hates it. She hates the fact that she's like that.
Can I tell you an amazing byproduct of that?
Yeah.
She's going to be an incredible leader.
Oh, yeah.
And if she is taken down a business ownership path or shown what business ownership is, she will greatly excel at that. And so there's pros and cons to every situation, right? And so for you right now, it's a massive struggle, and it sucks because everything you ask her to do, she doesn't want to do it, right?
Yeah.
That was exactly how I grew up.
I love that.
That
gives me some confidence.
I was the kid who did not want to listen to my dad. My dad and I had the issue, right? It wasn't my mom and I. And every time my dad asked me to do something, it was no. It was the opposite. Always the opposite, no matter what it was. I'm not saying every single time, 100% of the time, but 90% of the time, I was 100% asshole.
I love it.
But the silver lining in that is that he was hard on me because he knew that I had potential to do whatever it is he thought I could do. He saw something in me that I didn't see within myself. And I still, my dad died years ago, but I still have people in my life that push me that way. And I thank them for that, right? I have multiple mentors in my life that do that. And I also think that far too often people think that they only have one father or one dad. We have many, many fathers in our lives.
Yes.
As we pass through lives, whether that be a friend who's a little bit older or somebody who's a little wiser, or even somebody you do business with who's sharing tips and information with you. I think that we have to start breaking down the walls of what a father is and start accepting help more from people around us.
Yeah, especially when it's somebody who legitimately just wants to see you win.
Yes.
And I think that's what it's all about. And that's kind of the spirit which comes through your podcast when I listen to it, is you are in the spirit of not only I'm going to win, I'm going to win. That's a given. I'm doing the podcast because I want to help you win.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Absolutely, man.
So let's tell us about the podcast. Let's do that so that we make sure that we get out there. The podcast is
It's the Mind Your Own Business podcast with Steven Sterick.
This Mind Your Own Business podcast with Steven Sterick, and you can find it literally everywhere.
Literally everywhere, because Tom is a badass and knows how to put stuff out everywhere to the internet.
If you go somewhere and you can't find it, then you let us know. And I want to coordinate with your YouTube folks, because we'll talk about that later. But
sure.
We can also put another YouTube thing that's where people can kind of follow along and watch, and also follow along with the words. And
that'd be great.
Yeah,
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, I haven't done it yet, so I'm not sure how labor intensive it is, but I think it might be kind of fun. I'm going to try it with the walkout too.
Yeah, and so the purpose of the podcast is called Mind Your Own Business, and really it's about not minding your own business like hey, I want you to stay out of my life. It's no, I want to help you mind your own business. And whether that's your business or your personal life, whatever you got going on, I want to just help people by sharing the word of others, right? We have on our podcast, we only have distinguished guests and only people who have done cool stuff in their lives and who have the desire to help other people.
Right.
Because when you get two minds in a room that want to help other people, then every single time there's magic that happens.
You're right. You're right. And it's interesting that you say that, because through life you're chasing things. You know, as a kid you're chasing friends and you're chasing this, and then there comes a time where you're chasing girls, and then you're chasing that job, and you're chasing that all these things. And recently I've been chasing something, and I don't really know what it is, but every time I find it, it's in places like these Rotary meetings or at these big fundraisers. And that's it. It's what you're talking about. It's like-minded people that are like, I want, and I might not even necessarily know exactly what I'm doing here, but I know that I'm with a group of people who are determined to make our community a better place.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've seen that a lot in the last year or so. My pivotal moment was on a family trip. We all got COVID the day we got there. We went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and it was like a legacy family trip. My whole family, my mom, my stepdad, my in-laws as well. It was all of us. We rented this house, and the day after we got there, my youngest daughter got COVID. So we couldn't go anywhere. You know, Hawaii at the time was like, no, you have to quarantine for 5 days. We all got sick, all of us in the entire house. It ran through all of us. And the pivotal moment for me was I had my trucking business, amongst other things. I had my trucking business back here in Ventura. And if I wasn't there running it, it was not going to run itself.
Right.
And that was huge to me, going back to designing my life, right? The life I'm designing now all focuses around, as far as my professional life, it all focuses around being able to build a business in a backpack.
Nice.
A laptop and what you got in front of you right now, you've got a mixing board and all that. You can literally do this anywhere. This is a business in a backpack.
Let me show you my trucking device. This is it right there. A big old orange milk crate. And it's even got like tchotchkes to give to kids as they walk by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was my pivotal moment. And I think that you had your pivotal moment at that hotel casino in Laughlin.
Yeah.
And it really changes your perspective on how you want to move forward. And so what that forced me to do is to get around people who were doing things that I wanted to do, or that are doing things in the direction I wanted to design my life. And so I started getting into different mastermind groups, into different mentorship programs with people, and I'm seeing how they do it. And every single one of them, I won't say every single one of them, because there's always outliers as far as people in the group, but all of the mentors and the people leading these groups that I'm involved with, they all want to see you win, because they know that if we all win, we're all going to do it together. Yeah. And it's going to help us grow that much faster. It will create exponential growth, because like every time you have a loss, you get set back mentally and emotionally. But every time you have a win, you're just like, ooh, I'm going to the next level. I'm just jumping up. I'm bouncing. I'm going. And then what ends up happening is like a rising tide floats all boats. If you win, now I'm going to win. And I'm going to share my win with my buddy over here. And then we're all going to start winning together. And that's really what it's all about. Because as we all do that, we all grow emotionally, spiritually, but also our bank accounts grow as well. And listen, you can't help people if you're poor.
Yeah, you're right.
You really can't. I can't give thousands of dollars away if I'm poor.
Yeah.
There is no nobility in being poor, or saying anything like, repeat any phrase that people without money say, and it's not going to get you anywhere doing that, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's very important, going back to the community aspect, to be around people who are doing the things that you want to do and on the same trajectory, on that same path. And I think that one of the other things that I've done in the last year is shed a lot of friendships that were holding me back.
Yeah, that's smart. That's a hard one to do too.
So if you're with 5 people hanging out at a bar well, what are you? You're the same dude, right? You're the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're like one of 5 knuckleheads that's doing stupid shit every weekend and going out and partying, you're the 6th knucklehead,
Right.
right? You are a product of who you hang around with. They say, like, this is an old saying, right? And like people I think overuse it, but like you're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most.
Yeah.
And that's 100% true, because it's like osmosis. You hang around people doing big shit, you're going to start doing big shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally like impossible to not do it, because those people that are doing big shit, they're going to kick you out because you're not trying.
Right. They're going to move on. Yeah.
They're going to move on. Exactly. So that's something that I've had to really kind of struggle with, is like getting rid of relationships that were holding me back. And I know it's a necessary thing that I had to do, but it's also really hard, right? Because you have a history with these people, and it's not like I said like, F you, get out of my life. It was just like slowly stopped talking to them.
Yeah.
More and more time went between when we texted each other or called or hung out, to the point where like your life is on a different trajectory now, and that relationship just has run its course. That was a different season of life. Now we're in a new season of life. And what is this season going to look like? And what am I working towards, so that way the next season of my life looks so much different that I don't even recognize who I was a year ago or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So anyway, lots of stuff to chew on there.
No, it is, because I went from the road stuff, and one of my solutions from being on the road too much was to start producing a show, excuse me, the Giggles show, and doing the radio thing. Giggles, as I said, 8 years, not particularly fruitful, and never made money on it, never really created opportunities out of it, but the same people were always around.
Yeah.
And it was the same people always around. And as much as I love and care for those people, the ones that do comedy were not anywhere near capable of what I'm capable of. Like I get calls to do some of the bigger rooms, even though I'm fairly inactive as a comedian. I still get calls to do A rooms. You know what I mean? And I am I am fairly inactive, so it's hard when you have people that you feel like they're kind of relying on you, and just to get on stage to begin with. And
Yeah.
But after 8 years, I can walk away now, and I just go, I don't regret a minute of it. I go, well, I wish it would have been more fruitful, but the important thing is knowing that it's not fruitful, and now it's time to move on.
Yeah. You know what I think is, your story is your send-off. So the story that you've lived for the last 8 years of your life is not the story you're going to be living for the next 8 years of your life.
Yeah.
And so, but I also think there's power in using your message, right? And your story is your message. Your mess is your message. Everything that you've gone through can inspire people to either change their lives or do something better, or just so many times people get stuck in mediocrity and in comfort. And I think that the fear of change just completely stifles their desire to change.
Yeah.
One of the goals that I set out to do at the beginning of this year is to help people break away from their W-2 jobs. It's almost like a prison for a lot of people, but it's like a security blanket as a kid, because you just keep on getting a paycheck, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Somebody else does all the paperwork. You just
one of the greatest addictions in this country is a W-2 paycheck, is a steady paycheck. Because we just keep on working and working and working, right? And then what are you hoping for at the end of it? A mediocre 401k and maybe some Social Security benefits?
Yeah, $150 a day, just if you're
Yeah.
really, when you think about it, I mean, what jobs are out there? I mean, there are better jobs, but I think that most jobs hover now around, $20, $30 an hour.
Yeah, most entry-level stuff. I mean, January 1st, $16 is going to be the minimum wage. $16 an hour. It's going up to that January 1st.
It's probably going to be impossible to find a place that only pays $16 an hour, because everybody needs people so bad they're having to compete a little bit.
Right, and it's too expensive to live on minimum wage in California, and so, well, most places in the country it's too expensive to live on minimum wage. But the point of all that is to go back to getting people out of their W-2. If they feel, right, and I know that you mentioned this, like, if you feel like there's something that you're working towards, there's something like, that you have like not a higher purpose or whatever, but that there's something that is inside of you that you want to do, I think that people should actually just take the leap and try. You don't have to quit your W-2 to try something new. You have to just but what you do have to do is sacrifice some comfort. Far too often people fall into this routine comfort trap, and it might be because like it's just the way we do it and it's always been done that way, and this is our schedule during the week, and we pick up the kids and we drop them off and we go to this sporting event or that. People aren't willing to sacrifice the thing that they've done for years because that's just quote unquote what they do. They've labeled themselves as this is just what I do, or I am a nurse, or I am this, I am an engineer, I am insert whatever title that people have given themselves.
Right.
But if they just step outside of their comfort zone and they take whatever, let's say, hobby they have and they maybe want to turn it into a business, I think they'll find how easy it actually is and rewarding it actually is once they decide to take a step outside and see that they can do something outside of what they've normally done to better their life, and maybe, just maybe, they'll change their family tree forever.
Right. That's one of the things that I've seen value in. It might sound silly, but the Uber Eats, all that kind of ride sharing, that stuff, is you have people like, for example, my brother has a decent job working for the state franchise tax board, but he does that stuff for extra money. Of course, he hates his job. Who would love working for the state franchise tax board?
I don't know.
Who? He hates his job. But going out, and even though it's Uber Eats and it's not like, no, who wants to go do that? But he's seeing, I can go out and I can do things and I can create other opportunities and stuff like that. And I was telling him, I go, our country's not going in a direction where it's employee friendly.
No way.
Like the idea of 40 hours a week for the same company for 30 years, I think is pretty much out the window.
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone. That used to be the American dream. It is no longer that.
As soon as you start getting close to where you're getting some kind of, long-term benefits from them, they go, no, you aren't that necessary for us. There's somebody younger that requires less.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what happens is people become a product of an audit. And if you are not bringing in enough revenue per employee, well, then you're on the chopping block because there's somebody hungrier than you are waiting in line to take your job. And so we can't just wait for the opportunity to happen to us. We have to create it. And what ends up happening is when like your brother starts doing Uber Eats and delivery services, and he's working independently for himself, even though he's getting paid by a major corporation, he is his own business.
Yeah.
He's running his own business. He gets to figure out when he wants to work, how long he wants to work, how hard he wants to hustle or not hustle. And the amount that he earns is a direct result of how hard he hustles.
That's right.
So he gets a taste of that now, and then maybe he meets somebody or he gets this other idea. There used to be late night infomercials about like, real estate gurus and stuff. Oh, you can wholesale houses, flip houses.
But got it. California Pines. You remember that one?
Yes.
Remember that was
pay me $9.97 for my course and I'll tell you exactly how to do it. Right?
Yeah.
And that's how those gurus got rich. But what I'm talking about is maybe he sees an idea, or he has an organic idea on a business that he wants to start, or he sees a way to make money somehow. And now he's got the experience or the taste of making that money from doing the Uber Eats or doing the DoorDash or whatever he's doing. And he's like, man, this is possible. And every single thing that I've done, every change that I've made is usually because I've seen somebody else do it. And it's funny, I didn't think about this till this moment. We got to thank Uber, right? We got to thank Uber for showing people that it's possible for them to have their own business.
Yeah.
Whereas they would have never thought about that. Maybe not never thought about that, but they wouldn't have been shown in such an easy way. Like, hey, I can make my own money independently of this W-2 job that I have. And then maybe it sparks some interest for them to go out and do it on their own. Yeah. So Thank you very much, Uber and DoorDash.
Yeah, shout out Uber and DoorDash. And thank you for sitting down and talking with me. We've been here for a little while, but I know we'll have time to catch up and do this again very soon, because I find you endlessly fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
You're very good at helping put together, like, connect the dots. You know what I mean? If that makes sense.
It does make sense.
Like,
I really appreciate that.
There's so many people that'll tell you something's easy, but they won't say, look, this is where you start. You're not gonna start at the bottom of the hill, take 3 steps and be on top of the mountain. You're going to have to actually maneuver, and you might have to talk to a couple people along the way, and you might have to dry out your feet so that you don't get you actually are helping people go through that. And so there's a lot of value in that. And I think it's important when you see somebody who's presenting value, that it's important that you tell them. So thank you for presenting value to people, including myself. And
you're welcome, man. I appreciate that. And I will say this though, like, at every level of the game, no matter where you are on the journey, there's always going to be setbacks. There's always going to be, like you said, oh, you can't just walk 3 steps and be at the top of the mountain. Like, there's always going to be something. And this is something that I wish somebody would have really broken down for me, like with parenting. I wish that somebody would have told me, like, it's the hardest thing you'll ever do. You're never going to be right.
Yeah, that's true.
You're never going to be right. And just keep on learning. Literally every single day, try not to control the situation, and just try and make the best humans that you possibly can. And I wish that somebody would have told me that about parenting, but I also wish somebody would have told me a lot of stuff about business that I've learned over the years. And so I'm just happy to share what I know and what I've learned from people doing a lot bigger stuff than me, and people who have failed a lot larger than me. I was just on the phone this morning on a call, and some of those guys in that room have had failures recently where they've lost $2 million in 1 month. Like, wow. Literally just like, yeah, dude, I did a bad deal and I got involved with a person that I did not vet properly. And, the deal I got in was 18 months ago, but we just closed on the deal today and we lost $18 million.
Wow.
And of that, $2 million was mine. So anyway, every level of the game, there are setbacks. Hey guys, just wanted to take a second here and thank you for listening to the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. It means the world to me. It means so much to me that you guys are listening. I don't make any money off of this stuff. I do it for free. I do it out of the goodness of my heart. I want to help people, and I want to share all this cool information with you guys and everybody else in the world. So if you could think of somebody that you would share this to, so if they got some value out of it, I would really appreciate it. Share it on your socials. Click that little button for sharing and share it to your story. Thanks a lot.